It would be an understatement to say that Democrats are worried about what's going to happen in the midterms. Biden accidentally gave Republicans their new slogan, Ultra MAGA, calling Donald Trump the MAGA king, and Republicans loved it. Great work. Democrats are quitting the party and voting in Republican primaries, so the media's only response is it must be sabotage. But I've got data to suggest it's not. It's just people saying, I don't want to vote Democrat anymore. And then we see what may be one of the most insane political ads ever. Now, of course, I am but a humble 36-year-old millennial. Perhaps there have been crazier ads, but let me just say, in my lifetime, I never thought I would have seen a black Democratic candidate put a noose around his own neck for a political ad because everyone's losing their minds. Charles Booker of Kentucky is running against Rand Paul. Rand Paul is not some white supremacist guy. I mean, he's the guy who made the Breonna Taylor bill. After Breonna Taylor lost her life in this police raid, Rand Paul stepped up and said, let's ban what these cops did. Yet still, these people have no idea what they're talking about. Antifa actually attacked him. What do progressives say about this shockingly insane ad? They say it's bold. They say, wow, courage. Dude, I think reality has a conservative bias. That's what I've been saying. And Ian the other night on Timcast IRL asked, what does it mean? Stephen Colbert famously said, reality has a liberal bias. Maybe back then, but today, these are the people who believe Jussie Smollett. These are the people who believed the Covington hoax. These are the people who believed Russiagate. These are the people who believed Ukrainegate. These are the people who believed hands up, don't shoot. None of it is reality. So this guy is living in this twisted, insane cult reality. This is not the way the world is. It is 2022. This country is doing pretty well except for the weird culture war and the deconstruction, I guess, of cultural norms. And now we can see it. In Georgia, we are looking at massive voter turnout. I mean, it's nearly double or more. Many outlets are saying that Democrats actually voted. So how do you explain to a frantic and panicked political party that people are voting for Republicans? Well, it's simple. It's sabotage. That's the only explanation. Now, in reality, there is something weird about a surge in Democrats voting in a GOP primary. A primary is not an election. I mean, it is, but it's for a nomination, it's not the general election. So the only reason to vote in a primary is to decide who will be the nominee for the actual general election, in which case there's a good argument to say that Democrats are trying to sabotage GOP primaries. But when you look at the bigger picture, while cross-party voting is a thing, it looks like the data actually suggests people are just jumping ship. You take a look at something Joe Rogan said. He's in the press now. He's trending on Twitter. He said he's always been a liberal. But Fast Company, I covered this earlier, said that Joe Rogan is a right-wing comedian. Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks comes out and says, when has Joe defended anything left-wing? Because the left has gone so far left, none of it makes sense anymore. And if you point out a dude putting a noose around his neck is nuts, they'll call you right-wing. No wonder regular Americans are jumping ship and voting for the Republicans. I think it's simple, my friends. While this stuff is not going to have the intended consequences, you also have to recognize it's the economy, stupid. And when someone has to spend $100 to fill up their gas tank, and they barely make that per week. And what I mean to say is when they're making several $100 take home per week and it's $100 to fill up their tank, people are going to get angry. And you know what these people are going to learn? Joe Biden enacted policies in the name of climate change that drove gas prices and energy prices up. Now, if you don't like climate change, then I'm sure you're happy that you're spending $100 to fill up your gas tank. But regular people don't care about that. So this is going to be a major backlash the Democrats are going to face in just about 5 months. Can you believe it? But let's take a look at this campaign ad, which I can only say is insane. Sorry, it's just nuts. But I'll agree with Cenk Uygur. It is bold and courageous, but I'll add crazy as well. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com and become a member to help support the work of our journalists and the work I'm doing right here. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive members of the Timcast IRL podcast Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. We will have one of those tonight. So sign up today at timcast.com. Top right, you'll see that sign up button. You're also supporting our journalists. We're about to hire another journalist. We've lost a couple because it's the nature of the economy, man. It is difficult. It is tough. It's hard to find good people, man. For some reason, people are just, I don't know, man. This is a crazy economy. So we could use your support. If you believe in the mission and you believe in the work we're doing on building infrastructure and utilizing non-Silicon Valley tech infrastructure, we use Rumble Cloud services because we need to support companies that are challenging big tech censorship. Become a member at timcast.com, but also smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share this show right now, wherever you can. If every single person who watched shared this on social media, we would be bigger than CNN and MSNBC and the corporate press overnight. Here's the story from timcast.com. Kentucky Democrat Senate candidate wears noose in new campaign ad criticizing Senator Rand Paul. Now, I will just say, this is a fine factual news piece from Cassandra Fairbanks. Let me give you my opinion on the matter by calling it insane. Also point out, a lot of people like to say it's funny that I cite myself. They're like, Timcast cites timcast.com. Well, yeah, we have journalists who report the news. I don't know what else to say. I think it's funny. All right, here's the story. Kentucky Democrat Senate nominee Charles Booker has released a new campaign ad in which he is wearing a noose to criticize Senator Rand Paul. Senator Paul had opposed a 2020 bill making lynching a federal hate crime out of concern that the broad wording would be abused to give harsh penalties for minor infractions. Quote, this bill would cheapen the meaning of lynching by defining it so broadly as to include a minor bruise or abrasion, Senator Paul said of the bill. Our national history of racial terrorism demands more seriousness of us than that. Wow. Sounds like Rand Paul was actually saying we needed a more serious bill because this was too lax. The ad, titled Pain of Our Past, begins with an image of a noose swinging from a tree. The pain of our past persists to this day, Booker says, as it cuts to an image of a prop gallows used during the January 6th protests at the U.S. Capitol. Booker continues, in Kentucky, like many states throughout the South, lynching was a tool of terror. It was used to kill hopes for freedom. It was used to kill my ancestors, Booker says, as the video cuts to him speaking with the noose around his neck. Now, in a historic victory for our Commonwealth, I have become the first black Kentuckian to receive the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate. My opponent, the very person who compared expanded health care to slavery, the person who said he would have opposed the Civil Rights Act, the person who single-handedly blocked an anti-lynching act from being federal law, the choice couldn't be clearer. Let me explain to you why I think this is insane. We are not in this age anymore. We are in an era where we have a tremendous amount, a number of marginalized voices who hold and run for office. In fact, I'm fairly certain it's disproportionate. The United States is around 70% white. So you'd expect to see 70% of politicians. Well, in the Senate, I would say it's not. And it's mostly on the Democrat side, for sure. But we are seeing more and more marginalized voices running for office, winning office, and holding office. And it's because we are not in that era anymore. This is the weirdest thing to me. You'd think many people coming from marginalized backgrounds would celebrate the victories of America. They don't. I can speak to the meme about Tim Pool being mixed race, but this is why I bring that up. And as much as people like to say I bring it up a lot, I actually don't. But when I do, people just don't like it, I suppose. Most people on the left don't really like it, that I'm second generation mixed race because my family dealt with racism and miscegenation laws. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family that was multicultural with different ethnic backgrounds. And even though we did experience some racism, I had the law on my side. So when I grew up in this country, when I grew up in the south side of Chicago, hey, I said that one too, right? That means you got to drink or something. I viewed this country as succeeding. I don't view this country by the horrors of its past. I view it by its successes, not its failures. We started off with bad and archaic ideas, and they're archaic for a reason. We defeated them. Almost 1 million Union soldiers died to end slavery, to preserve the Union. But it was because the Union was like, we are not going to allow slavery anymore. Many of these people fighting abolitionists, some of them were outright nuts. John Brown walked up to a slaver and just blasted him in the face. Like, these people were outright like, enough. I don't know about going as far as to walk up to a random person and just, shoot him. That's nuts. And that's where people were during the Civil War. So I don't look at this country by its failures. I don't want to see people say, look how awful this country was. What I want to see a dude be like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a ranking officer in the military, something like that. That this country, with all of its writings from the founding fathers and all of its faults, chose the right course of history. I look at this and I see people who are plagued by this cult ideology that they can never let go. Now, he's not wrong. I'll give him credit for that. Charles Booker makes a point about the terror of what happened in this country based on race. And as I stated, my family knew. My grandparents experienced miscegenation laws. It means you couldn't cohabitate if you were a different race. And we won. So, y'all, I'm happy about it. I would not make a video with like a noose around my neck or someone spitting on me and calling me names or anything like that. I'll make a video of me walking up and like fist bumping a dude and high-fiving and laughing, skating with people and being like, in this country, the American dream is real. From humble beginnings and marginalized backgrounds, you can succeed. That's the message, not this trash. So I cannot stand the Democrat Party and what they've become. Oh, I said Democrat Party. Take a look at this from CNN. Rand Paul introduces bill to end the type of warrant involved in Breonna Taylor's death. Oh, but he's the big bad racist? Get that narrative out of here, dude. Rand Paul's a good guy. They really despise him. So what do you think the progressives have to say about Charles Booker? We turn to our good friend Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. He says, wow, no one is going to accuse progressives of not running bold. That is one of the most courageous political ads I've ever seen. I honestly don't think Cenk is wrong about that. I think his statement is completely correct. I think he's approaching it from a positive perspective I disagree with, but the ad is bold and it is courageous. I just happen to think that it's insane and cult-like and sad in a lot of ways. That so much of what the Democratic Party represents is pain, victimhood, and failure instead of triumph, strength, victory. The idea is that after all of these years, we won. They don't want to accept it. They don't want to just sit down and be like, hey, guess what? We won this one. They want to make sure everyone revels in the pain of the past. I don't like it. I can't stand it. Here we are in the modern era. Some Democrats voting in GOP primaries to block Trump picks. They're so desperate. I'm not entirely convinced this is reality, to be completely honest. That the reason for the big surge is because Democrats are just panicked that Trump's picks might win. I think Democrats are voting in the GOP primary because they want to vote Republican. Now, why vote in the GOP primary? This is interesting. There's no reason to. If you want a Republican to win, you can just vote for the Republican in the general. I don't think that's how it works for regular people. I think that's assumptive. I think regular people just know you got to go vote. They probably got flyers. They probably saw signs saying vote today and they went, I'm voting Republican. According to the AP, they say around 37,000 people who voted in Georgia's Democratic primary 2 years ago cast ballots in last week's Republican primary, an unusually high number of so-called crossover voters. So what could this be? They have a quote from one woman saying that they've got to block Donald Trump's picks. But let's jump over to the Georgia governor primary election results. Now, this one, I believe, so this is the 2022 results. Stacey Abrams, 723,883 votes. He was the only one running, so it's a given. We take a look at the Republican GOP turnout, and it's around 1.2 million. Now, that's fascinating. 1.2 million. Brian Kemp got 885,000. David Perdue got 261,000, and Candace Taylor got 41,120. 37,000 Democrat voters, is that it? Okay, assuming that's true, and it may be meaningless. It's meaningless. It wouldn't have shifted the race. It would not have given Perdue or Candace Taylor a victory. And get rid of 37,000 votes from Brian Kemp. He still beats Stacey Abrams. Granted, the general is going to be different, but if we're going by percentages, Democrats have to know they are going to lose, right? We have this from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Data shows thousands of Democrats voting in the GOP primary. Why? January 26, 2022, The New Yorker ran this story. Should Democratic primary voters help save the GOP from itself? Crossover voting is an unfortunate reputation, but perhaps it's just a question of the intentions behind it. Okay. If Democrats did vote for Brian Kemp, and that means that the less popular candidate didn't win, they're just helping the GOP, period. So it doesn't matter what their intent is. Democrats voting in the GOP primaries is helping Republicans. They are losing their minds. That's just reality. Now, this didn't start here. I remember this narrative from 2020. Vox.com ran this story. Some Tea Party Republicans in South Carolina are voting for Bernie Sanders. The idea was that Republicans could vote for Bernie to cause strife for the Democratic Party. Okay. I mean, maybe. People just do it. But I don't think it matters. When you look at the turnout, let me show you 2018 turnout. Stacey Abrams in 2018, the turnout was, 550,000 for the Democrats. And among the Republicans, it was only around 600 or so thousand votes. It's doubled. It has basically doubled the GOP turnout. Yeah, I don't see how you get that without massive first-time voters, Democrats quitting the party. So long. I'll put it this way. Shout out Cenk Uygur. You're right. It's a bold and courageous ad. I mean that seriously. It is. To make a statement like that and try and grab people's attention with wearing a noose around your neck, for sure. I just think that it's not going to have the intended consequences. I think regular people are going to see that and be like, yo, that's crazy, dude. That's crazy. That's just nuts. I think people in Kentucky like Rand Paul because they know who he is. Because he is not some fringe far-right MAGA dude. He's never been. I mean, Ron and Rand Paul are particularly libertarian. The Libertarian Party, they don't like Trump either. Talk to these guys, they'll criticize him all day and night. Granted, Rand Paul is in the Republican Party. He is not some mainstream establishment GOP guy. And I think people in Kentucky know that. Here we go. Cenk Uygur tweeted this. It's amazing how unaware people are. Joe Rogan just said, quote, I'm so liberal. Like, I talk about it all the time. Like, I am not a conservative. Based on what? All he's done for the last 2 years is extreme right-wing propaganda. But in his mind, he's still a compassionate liberal. I can't name a single thing Rogan was in the news for in the last 2 years that was a left-wing position. I can't name a single thing he has criticized the right wing for. He still promotes lunatic right-winger Alex Jones, and in his mind, he's on the left. Hilarious and ridiculous. Rogan is wondering why Fox News was the only one to support him lately. That's because you went hardcore right-wing. You didn't figure that out? You thought it was just a coincidence, or they love freedom? And if he's so left-wing, why are all of his defenders extreme right-wingers? Our actual good friend, Count Dankula, responds, it's because he's a typical liberal like you would get in the 90s. All of you just changed what liberal was. That's not on him. That's on you. There's a meme where it's a guy, so they say, who radicalized you? And the guy says, no one. I'm just a regular person from 10 years ago. Progressives responded to my posting of that meme by saying that proves it. A regular person in 1954 would not have been in favor of the Civil Rights Act. Aha! Except we're talking about liberals and conservatives. And the shift was not all that great. Actually, in 1954, there were many people in the civil rights era who did not agree with segregation and racism and all that. And many were liberals, and that's why the 1964 Civil Rights Act passed. So let me clarify this for all of you when you say Joe Rogan is not left-wing. The reason you get in 1964 a bill that changes the law is because for 10 plus years prior, it was people who opposed racism challenging the system and building popularity to change it. Get it? That means in 2012, liberals who advocated for gay marriage, people like me, and then saw that victory in 2014 said, we did it. But now all of a sudden, people are talking about sterilizing children. and performing gender-changing surgery on kids. Okay, we have won victories based on our position over the past 10 years. You have jumped the shark. I love how Cenk says he can't name a single thing Rogan was in the news for. I think that just shows Cenk doesn't read the news. Because if you Google it, there's like a bunch. Joe Rogan had Andrew Yang on. And a year ago, 1 year, there's a story from Heavy saying how Joe Rogan's pushing universal basic income helped mainstream the idea with Andrew Yang and helped launch Andrew Yang. And he had on Bernie Sanders on his show. And he's advocated for UBI over and over again. He said Barack Obama, I think he said this, was one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. Cenk doesn't read the news. He reads propaganda. So they're not going to praise Joe Rogan when he says something left-wing because it's irrelevant. They want clicks. They want money. This is what you end up with. People like Cenk Uygur. I bring you now to the White House. Inside a Biden White House adrift. Amid a rolling series of calamities and sinking approval ratings, the president's feeling lately is that he just can't catch a break. And that angst is rippling through his party. Part of me wishes every day that I will find something to praise within the Democratic Party. But the anti-establishment progressive voices are people like Cenk Uygur. He doesn't read the news. It's remarkable that, Joe Rogan came out and said you have groomers in schools. Cenk says, tell me where that's happening. And he falsely framed Joe's argument and didn't even bother Google searching what Joe was talking about. I shouldn't just call him out consistently. There's other people. We had Matt Binder on the Tim Castello podcast, and he couldn't really explain any of these ideas around these progressive values. Notably, if late trimester abortions don't happen, why make it legal? Serious question. They say it's extremely rare, it never happens. I'm like, okay, why make it legal? And they're like, oh, for the health of the mother. And I'm like, no, you're not understanding. It says that you can effectively terminate the life of the baby, regardless. Why? Oh, well, health of the mother, it's her choice. Okay, dude. They've gotten to the point where they're saying it never happens, but they're desperately trying to make it legal, and they can't give me an answer as to why I should support that. It never happens. Maybe it doesn't happen because it's illegal. I don't know, right? Although technically it does happen with people like Gosnell and other really disgusting things. I'd like to give you what I find to be one of the funniest elements of this story. Byron York, he is chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, tweets, the father of Ultra MAGA. Applying all his political savvy and the wisdom of decades of experience, President Biden comes up with a punchy slogan for the other side. NBC News writes, a few weeks ago, Biden started employing a midterm election tactic that has been a go-to for sitting presidents, villainize the opposition. He has sought to tether Republicans to Trump's Make America Great Again agenda. But Biden has been leaning on White House aides to come up with a message that captures the stark choice voters face. Biden himself thought up the phrase Ultra MAGA, which he and other Democrats have started using in hope of drawing a clear contrast with Trump's movement. The phrase tested well in polling revealed by the White House, but it also had the unintended effect of firing up the Trump faithful. Merchandisers have found a hot market for Ultra MAGA shirts. The response. Many on the left are laughing, and they're saying Republicans are so dumb. Polls showed that regular people don't like the MAGA phrasing. Donald Trump got 74 million votes in 2020. Joe Biden got 81 million. There are a lot of people that say, Tim, tell people the truth about 2020. And it's like, okay, look, release the evidence. Show me some proof. We'll have a conversation about it. Apparently something's happening in Arizona, but it's been years now. What do you expect from me? We'll look through it, and I did. But I don't see any evidence suggesting that the 81 million votes were not legitimate votes. No, I know Bill Barr said there was fraud. I know people talk about ballot harvesting. I know about 2,000 mules. But that is harvesting. If you're talking about fraudulent ballots, there's some, perhaps, not that I've seen it would be big enough. Here's what I think. Possible? Of course it is. Likely, I just don't see the world that way. I think the reality is people were fired up and hated Donald Trump. What's happening now? Joe Biden had his chance. All right. The economy is in shambles. Gas prices are through the roof, and it's the economy, stupid. from Politico, Democrats sweat GOP surge in South Texas special election. Rep. Vincent Gonzalez is warning his party of a self-inflicted tragedy in the making among Latino voters. Democrats already had a South Texas problem on the verge of getting worse. Republicans are well positioned to flip former Rep. Philemon Vela's seat in a special election this summer, a victory that will further reduce Speaker Nancy Pelosi's already minuscule majority and send a jolt of momentum through the GOP's bid to turn the entire Rio Grande Valley red in the midterms. National Republicans have so far pumped in nearly $450,000 on TV to help Mayra Flores become their first rep from the region in decades. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and its allies, meanwhile, have stayed out of the contest, preferring to focus on its upcoming races in the fall instead. I'm very concerned. Democratic Rep. Vincent Gonzalez said, the Republicans are all in, and they have invested heavily in the district. Yeah, I'll tell you what's happening. Latino voters in the Rio Grande Valley don't like the broken border. Democrats are flipping. They're probably voting in the GOP election primaries because they don't like what's going on. Gallup says economic pessimism growing in the U.S. Full stop. That's it. When people feel the economy is bad, they vote out the main party. That's what happens. I think people are relatively simple, and you can learn a lot from the data. When people think things are going bad, they say, other guy. So when people say 2020 election and, stop the steal and all that stuff, I'm like, guys, we had a pandemic and the economy was doing bad. And regular people don't know about what's going on. I get it. There was weird stuff that happened. But you should not rely on that, regardless of whether you think it's true or not. Some people, I think it's voter suppression. You need to tell people, get out the vote. Vote in the primaries, vote in the general. Because if it is true that Democrats are seeking to sabotage the election for Republicans, Republicans may be sadly surprised when come November, they're like, but we had this big GOP turnout. What happened? Oh, that was actually Democrats sabotaging you, and you thought you had it in the bag. Now, considering Donald Trump's nominees, the people he's endorsed, have been winning in large amounts, I don't think Democrats are successfully sabotaging anything. I think some probably are, but I think for the most part, they're losing. I think what we're seeing is the White House is in shambles. People are quitting. Take a look at this. Biden sees exodus of black staffers and some frustration among those who remain. The White House is historically diverse, but there are concerns internally about a wave of departures and the current culture. At least 21 black staffers have left the White House since late last year or are planning to leave soon. Some of those who remain say it's no wonder why. They describe a work environment with little support from their superiors and fewer chances of promotion. There you go, man. Not even his own diverse staffers are enjoying his administration. Kamala Harris is like an AI predictive text just spewing out nonsense and is indecipherable. Joe Biden, who knows what he's doing with his son? Do you see that segment I produced earlier? If you listen to the podcast, you'll hear it in a minute. Sharing phone numbers with Hunter and sharing links to adult content? What is this guy even doing? It's no surprise everything's falling apart. Take a look at this one. This one's hilarious. Karine Jean-Pierre claims she did not hear that part of the speech when Biden falsely claimed he was appointed to the Naval Academy in 1965. She said she did not hear that part of the speech. Quote, I need to read it myself and just go back and see what you're talking about. I can't speak to it right now. At the top of Biden's commencement address to Naval Academy graduates, he told a story about how Delaware Senator J. Caleb Boggs. I was appointed to the Academy in 1965 by a senator who I was running against in 1972, Biden said. The timeline doesn't make sense because in 1965, Biden was already graduating from the University of Delaware. I didn't hear it. I have no idea what you're talking about. This administration is crumbling. That's insane. So let's go back to that first story, my friends. Democrats are quitting because of this. Dude, I actually respect it to a certain degree. He's trying something, but they keep chasing the dragon, man. That's a story I tell people from when I worked at Fusion. When I got started at Fusion, it's ABC News joint venture. They were normal. They had a show called Drug Wars. It was like federales in Mexico going after cartels. I was like, oh, that's cool. They said, we want to be nice Vice. They had a show that was very much like Vice. That was, they would go to the weird and wild of the world. It's a cool show. Never really took off. About 6 months in or 8 months in, they changed the editor-in-chief. He posted his Twitter banner was down with whiteness and a black fist being raised. They decided we're getting woke. And then I was like, why? You know what I think happened? They produced a bunch of videos. The one video that got tons of traffic was on a transgender child. I think they saw that and said, this is our market. It's working. Let's embrace it. It makes sense from a business perspective. You cast 100 nets. You cast 100 lines. You see which one gets a bite from a fish, right? And then you pull that one in. So when they put out all this content and then saw that trans kids was generated viewership for them, they said, that's where we're going, baby. We got it. And I said, it's a drug addiction. You are chasing the dragon and you will regret it. And they did. They went belly up. Everybody gets laid off. Now the company's gone. The website became Splinter and they tried attaching it to some other property. And then what was Splinter even? It didn't even have an identity. They chase the dragon, man. It is an addiction. Regular people don't like this. It's freaky and weird. I'll tell you what I want to see. This is me. As a regular American guy, right? I always hate commercials that don't tell you what they're selling. Have you ever noticed this? Pharmaceutical commercials. Just like a woman laughing, and then there's like a dragon in the air, and then like fire rains in the sky, and she's like, oh, but then she like pops a pill and it turns into sunflowers, and it's like, ask your doctor if Florbo Nostra is right for you. And it's like, no, I won't, because I have no idea what you're talking about. Or commercials where it's like, you've got what was it? The Kendall Jenner, whatever her name is, and like the riot, they're protesting, and then the cop hands her a Pepsi, and I'm like, what is this? You know what you want? I got an idea for a commercial for Pepsi. How about it's a dude and he's eating a sandwich with chips, and then he like hiccups and he's like, and then he cracks the Pepsi open and he drinks and he goes, ah. And he's like, man, that's the perfect thing to wash down my sandwich and chips. Actually speak to the experience of why you would enjoy a soda. Not like, we're protesters, Black Lives Matter. I'll tell you what I want to hear from a politician. Not victimhood, oh, this is what the past is. Here's what I want to hear. I want to see a politician. You want to do a campaign ad? If it were me, I'd be like, hey, guys, I think we've got a problem with, nonsensical gun control, not actually addressing any of the issues. Certain weapons are banned, but modern variants aren't. It's not actually doing anything. You've got to stop voting for people who will just prop up a cause and then as soon as they get elected, walk away from it. Here's my list of things I would do. That would speak to me. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm a weird person who wants just an authentic, straightforward message from somebody who says, I think marijuana should be legal. Me personally, I think we should have restrictions on abortion after viability. So I would not be in favor of the Democrats' federal bill. If you're not all about that, don't vote for me. I think we should tax the rich. I think we should increase. I'll tell you why we should tax the rich. We need, and I'll tell you what I mean by that, because I actually researched this stuff. I think we need to expand the brackets. I don't like the idea of just taking money from rich people and giving it to the government, but there's one thing that increased taxes and higher brackets does. It causes rich people to spend their money. That's really it. I'll speak from experience running a business. When they come to me and they're like, you're going to see a tax increase under Biden, I go, okay, it's time to spend the money. Otherwise, you lose it. So in many ways, you need to understand the effects of taxes on the economy. It doesn't mean the government just gets to increase their revenue. It actually could be that increasing taxes means rich people say, let's not sit on cash. Let's utilize it to maximize our growth potential. But there's an argument around there, and I am fairly moderate, so I'm open to discussion around taxing the rich. But I am, look, in this regard, I'm closer to Steve Bannon than I am your traditional conservative, and Bannon's more of a populist, though they call him far right. I think you should just be honest, be straightforward. I'll tell you this, a lot of people probably would not want to vote for that. Okay, don't. You know, that's the thing about doing a show like this. I don't want to be in government. I don't want to be in politics. I certainly won't tell you I certainly will tell you what I would not do. And I would not come out and be like, the world hates you and they're evil and nasty. Look at my neck. It's gross, man. I'm going to stop. I don't want to rant on this one. let me just say, I think it's nuts. I think the Democrats have lost their minds. I think the Republican Party has always been trash, but there's a handful of Republicans that I do like. I prefer the Mises Caucus over anyone. I don't know if they can actually win, but we will see. I might actually want to vote for them. I would love to see libertarians in Congress. Let's see what we can pull off. Where are you at, New Hampshire? Shout out to the Mises Caucus guys. I think they're pretty good dudes. I don't agree with them on a lot of things, but I think we need authentic and honest people. Republican and Democratic parties ain't got it. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.